Ever wonder what it feels like to be mistaken for a messiah? Imagine waking up in your modest apartment only to be abducted by an alien cult convinced you're their savior. Sound fun? It gets better. When they start worshiping you and their power-hungry leader tries to eliminate you, you might think it can't get any crazier. But what if I told you that by the end of this wild ride, you'll see an ordinary human wield extraordinary power and bring a galaxy to its knees? Stick around. This is a story with a punchline you won't see coming. Ben Harris was having a bad day. He was on his way home from his dead-end job at the crowded interstellar market, his life a swirl of monotony and underachievement. The last thing he expected was to be snatched up by an alien race he only knew from late-night conspiracy theory channels. But as an ominous hum filled his tiny apartment, followed by a blinding light, Ben found himself losing the ground beneath his feet and his sense of reality. When the light faded, he was in what appeared to be an ancient, temple-like structure. Rows of chanting, robed figures surrounded him, their faces obscured by elaborate masks. "Awaken, O Divine One!" echoed through the chamber, the alien voices hollow and reverent. Ben blinked, his mind scrambling to catch up with the situation. He couldn't help but laugh internally. Great, he thought, not abducted by regular aliens, but by the cult variety. Just my luck. A figure stepped forward, more elaborately adorned than the others. His mask gleamed under the eerie light, his movements graceful yet unsettling. This had to be the ringleader, Ben figured. "Our prophecy is fulfilled," the figure announced, voice dripping with authority. "The Divine One walks among us." Well, this is a new level of weird, Ben thought, trying his best to keep a straight face. He cleared his throat, gathering what little courage he had. Greetings, fellow believers?" He felt awkward, but it was a start. The robed figures gasped in unison. "He speaks!" The leader turned and gave a signal, and a platform rose from the ground, pushing Ben upward. Ben's mind was a whirlpool of panic and dark humor. "You're doing great, Ben. Next, they'll serve you lunch and a cult pamphlet." He shook his head, trying to make sense of the alien language that was being blasted into his ears from all directions. Great Prophet Harold Zur stepped closer. His eyes bore into Ben with a mixture of suspicion and forced reverence. "We have long awaited your arrival, O Divine One," he said, each word carefully chosen. Ben took a deep breath, contemplating his next move. "Well, it's about damn time," he said aloud, surprising himself with his own bravado. "I've been stuck in the void of mediocrity long enough." He shrugged, injecting a touch of theatricality into his voice. "Might as well play along." Harold Zur's eyes narrowed. "Tell us, Divine One, what wisdom do you bring us?" Ben thought quickly. Wisdom? Oh boy. Human wisdom, huh? All right. He summoned all the nonsense motivational quotes he'd ever heard. "Life is short. Drive fast and leave a beautiful legacy," he said with exaggerated flair. "And believe in yourself because no one else will." The crowd erupted in a mix of confusion and awe, their alien faces unable to hide their perplexity. Ben had to bite back a grin. "You got this, Ben," he thought. "Just keep it vague and inspiring." Suddenly, an ornate pedestal emerged in front of him, holding a glowing artifact. Instinctively, Ben reached out to touch it, and the crowd inhaled sharply. As his fingers made contact, a low hum resonated through the chamber, and the artifact's glow intensified. Harold Zur's eyes widened with genuine surprise and perhaps a touch of fear. "The sacred relic responds. The prophecy is true." Ben felt a strange warmth spread through his arm and into his chest. Oh, this was bad, or good. He wasn't sure. "Ben, you've certainly outdone yourself this time," he thought, trying to stay cool despite the bizarre sensation. The crowd's chanting grew louder, more frantic. Harold Zur stepped back, visibly shaken, his mask hiding his true emotions poorly. "Praise the Divine One," he declared, though his voice wavered. Ben stood there, his heart pounding. He'd somehow managed to tap into their beliefs and gain some semblance of control. Now all he had to do was survive this madness and figure out what it all meant. "Hang in there," he thought, steeling himself. "You've just landed the craziest role of your life." Ben paced back and forth in his small, dimly lit quarters, provided by the Thalkuri. The room was a far cry from his apartment, sterile with metallic walls and strange symbols etched in an alien language. He had to come up with a plan, fast. The overwhelming absurdity of the situation gnawed at him, but his dark humor refused to let him sink into despair. Divine one, he muttered to himself, more like divine comedy. A soft chime interrupted his thoughts. The door slid open, revealing Zix, the rogue scientist he'd met earlier. Zix's eyes glinted with both curiosity and skepticism. Divine one, Zix said, his tone dripping with irony. I brought you sustenance. Ah, alien cuisine, Ben replied, eyeing the tray of what looked like glowing blue gruel with flecks of something he didn't want to identify. Just what the Divine One ordered. Zix gave a snort, setting the tray on a small table. May I sit? He asked, though it was clear he didn't care for an answer. Zix plopped down, his long limbs folding awkwardly. You're not what I expected. Ben raised an eyebrow. And what were you expecting? Someone with divine culinary taste? Someone more, Zix said, waving a hand vaguely. Harold Zur is convinced you're the answer to our prophecies, but I remain unconvinced. You seem more like an accident. Ben chuckled. Story of my life, buddy. Tell me something, though. Why all this pomp and reverence? What's the deal with this prophecy? Zix leaned back, eyes narrowing. The Thalkuri have long awaited a figure who would come from the stars, one who would wield the power of the sacred relic and lead us to greatness. Harold Zur has used this belief to maintain control. Of course, Ben thought, ancient aliens and their prophecies. As if my life wasn't complicated enough. Out loud, he said, so I'm just a pawn in this grand game of cosmic chess? Zix stood, his manner growing serious. Perhaps, but prophecy or not, you've stirred something. Harold Zur is nervous. You survived the sacred relics test, something many have failed. Ben fiddled with the edge of his robe, a dark thought forming. And what happens if I fail their expectations? Zix's eyes darkened. Harold Zur will eliminate any threat to his power. He's already planning your downfall. Ben's heart skipped a beat. Of course he is, because this isn't complicated enough, he thought. He met Zix's gaze, his voice steady. Then we need a plan. Zix tilted his head, a curious flicker crossing his face. We? Yes, we. You don't seem too fond of Harold Zur's reign either, Ben said, leaning in. Help me navigate this crazy world. Together we can turn the tide. Zix hesitated, his gaze shifting as if weighing the risks. Eventually, he nodded. Very well, Divine One. I'll help you. But understand this. My assistance is for the good of the Thalkuri, not because I believe in your supposed divinity. Fair enough, Ben said, extending a hand. Let's show Harold Zur what humans are capable of. Zix clasped Ben's hand in a firm shake, sealing their uneasy alliance. We'll start with understanding the sacred relic. If you can truly control it, you might have a chance. Ben grinned, his dark humor sparking up once more. And here I thought I'd peaked at getting promoted to supervisor at the supermarket. Turns out I'm aiming a bit higher now. As Zix departed, Ben allowed himself a moment of reflection. His new ally might be skeptical, but it was a start. He had to outsmart Harold Zur, survive the insane expectations of the Thalkuri, and maybe, just maybe, find a way back home. Buck up, Harris, he thought. You've gone from zero to hero. Time to act the part. With a renewed sense of purpose, Ben stared at the dimly glowing walls of his quarters. He was in deep, but if there was one thing he'd learned from his misadventures in life, it was that humans weren't to be underestimated. The Thalkuri didn't know it yet, but they just invited chaos incarnate into their orderly world, and he was ready to stir the pot. Ben found himself standing in the cavernous chamber again, this time with Zix by his side. The Thalkuri congregants had gathered, their hooded forms swaying with fervor. The air buzzed with a charged energy, and at the center stood the sacred relic, pulsating with a mysterious glow. Ben couldn't help but feel a mix of awe and absurdity. His voice cut through the silence. All right, everyone, gather around. Story time with the Divine One. Zix shot him a sideways glance. You must be serious, Ben. Focus on the relic. Ben nodded, still smirking inwardly. Sure thing, Zix. Time to flex my divine muscles. He placed his hands on the sacred relic, feeling its warmth seep into his skin. The glowing intensified, casting eerie shadows across the chamber. Harold Zur's voice broke through the hum. Prove your worth, Divine One. Command the relic. His tone was laced with suspicion and a hint of desperation. Ben closed his eyes, searching for some form of connection, some inner command that might resonate with this alien artifact. He felt a tingling sensation in his fingertips, spreading through his arms. Oh boy, here goes nothing, he thought, willing the relic to respond. To his surprise, the relic's energy surged, enveloping the chamber in a bright light. A deep, resonant hum filled the air, growing louder and louder. Ben felt a strange sense of control, as if he were guiding the very essence of the relic itself. The congregation gasped, their awe palpable. Harold Zur stepped back, his eyes wide with shock. It responds to him! Ben opened his eyes, his dark humor bubbling up. See that? Just a little human magic trick, he said, his voice laden with sarcasm. But inside, his heart was racing. Holy crap, I actually did it! Zik's voice was a mix of amazement and caution. Incredible. But remember, keep control. Show them strength, not uncertainty. Ben nodded, focusing on the relic. He concentrated on a simple command, willing the energy to form a protective barrier around the chamber. The light shifted, creating a shimmering dome that encased them all. Harel Zur's expression morphed from shock to something darker. Remarkable, yet dangerous, he muttered under his breath. His eyes flicked to Ben, calculating and wary. But power alone is not proof of divinity. Ben met Harel Zur's gaze, his own eyes filled with resolve. Power is just the beginning. Conviction is what makes a leader. The tension in the chamber was thick, the air electric with potential conflict. The congregants were abuzz with whispered conversations, their faith being tested and reshaped in real time. Zix leaned in, his voice low. Well done, but we need more than just a light show. They need to believe in your vision. A plan formed in Ben's mind. He stepped forward, gesturing grandly. Listen to me, Thalkuri. The relic has shown me a path, one where we rise together, stronger than ever. We will rebuild, innovate, and protect our people against all threats. Harel Zur's eyes narrowed. And what threats do you foresee, Divine One? Ben's smile was devoid of humor. The kind that come when you least expect, from both within and outside our ranks. But together, we stand invincible. The crowd roared with approval, the mixture of awe and belief almost tangible. Harel Zur clenched his fists, forcing a smile. Wise words indeed. We shall see if they come to pass. As the congregation dispersed, Ben turned to Zix. That went well, right? Actually, I have no clue what I'm doing, but it felt right. Zix grinned for the first time. You did more than well. You gave them hope. Ben exhaled, the weight of the moment settling in. Hope, huh? Guess it's a start. But we'll need more than hope to outmaneuver Haralzer. Zix nodded. Agreed. We've ignited a spark. Now we must fan it into a flame. Ben looked at the fading glow of the sacred relic. Here's to fanning flames and stirring the pot, he thought. He couldn't shake the feeling that he was in deeper than ever. But one thing was clear. He wasn't going to back down. Not now. Let's get to work, he said aloud, his voice filled with newfound determination. Ben stood on a balcony overlooking the main courtyard of the Thalkuri temple. The dusk cast long shadows, giving the ancient stone structures an eerie glow. Fires lit in sconces flickered, casting an otherworldly light across the assembled crowd below. Tonight, the faithful gathered in greater numbers than ever before, a testament to the growing influence of the Divine One. Zix stood beside Ben, his normally sarcastic demeanor replaced with genuine concern. Harel Zur is planning something. His loyalists have been gathering in the shadows. Ben smirked, eyes scanning the crowd. Let me guess, he didn't appreciate my latest sermon on truth over tyranny? We've ignited hope, but that's also ignited fear in him, Zix replied, adjusting his cloak to conceal a small device. We need to stay ahead of him. Ben nodded, his mind racing. Right, time to give our audience a show they won't forget. He turned to Zix, a grin forming. You ready? Zix sighed. As ready as I'll ever be to overthrow a demigod dictator. Ben stepped forward, raising his hands to silence the murmuring crowd. The air was thick with anticipation, every eye trained on him. Thalkuri, my people! His voice echoed through the courtyard, commanding attention. Tonight we stand on the brink of a new dawn. But know this, the path to greatness is fraught with peril. A stir ran through the crowd, their whispers like rippling water. Harald Zur emerged from the shadows, flanked by armored guards. The smug confidence on his face was a thin veil masking his inner turmoil. Divine One, you speak of perils, yet bring none but words. His voice dripped with derision. Would you dare face true challenge? Ben's eyes locked onto Harald Zur. Careful what you wish for, Prophet. I might just surprise you. Harald Zur smirked, stepping closer to challenge Ben directly. Then prove your worth here and now, before the faithful. He gestured, and his guards formed a menacing line. A show of strength. Only then will they truly believe. Ben's heart pounded, but he saw the flash of agreement in Zix's eyes. It was now or never. A show of strength? All right, here goes, he thought. Out loud he declared, Very well, Harald Zur, let's give them a real spectacle. With an almost casual flick, Ben activated the sacred relic. A barrier of glowing energy enveloped him and Zix, illuminating the twilight with an ethereal light. The Thalkuri gasped, a collective intake of breath as they witnessed this new display of power. Harald Zur's eyes widened briefly before narrowing with anger. Convincing, but can energy alone save you? He raised his hand, giving his guards the signal to attack. The guards rushed forward, weapons raised. Ben's mind worked at lightning speed, fueled by a mix of fear and adrenaline. All right, artificial intelligence of the sacred relic, don't fail me now, he thought. Channeling the energy from the relic, he sent a shockwave that sent the guards tumbling backwards, their armor clattering. The crowd erupted in a mix of awe and confusion. Harald Zur staggered back, visibly unnerved by the turn of events. This is just the beginning, Ben said with a dark smile. I will defend the Thalkuri from every threat, both within and without. A murmur ran through the spectators. Zix seized the moment, stepping forward. See how the Divine One protects us? While the Prophet hides behind his guards, the Divine One commands the very elements. Ben watched as the crowd's faith shifted. They were teetering on the edge of doubt and belief. Harald Zur's grip on power was slipping. Stay with me, people. We're almost there, he thought, feeling the weight of his words. Harald Zur's face twisted with rage. Blasphemer, he roared. Seize him now! But his command lacked the previous fervor. The guards hesitated, their loyalty wavering. Ben raised his hands, the energy from the relic pulsing brighter. This is your last chance, Harald Zur. Surrender your false throne or be consumed by your own hatred. Harald Zur faltered, taking a cautious step back. The tide was turning, and he could feel it. Ben could see the uncertainty in the prophet's eyes. It was a fleeting moment, but it was enough. We are stronger together, Ben announced, his voice unwavering. Join me, Thalkuri, and we will rise beyond the prophet's lies. The crowd erupted in cheers, their voices a thunderous affirmation. Zix leaned in close, his voice barely a whisper. You did it, Ben. They're with you. Ben nodded, his heart swelling with determination. This is just the beginning, he thought. The real battle has only just begun. Ben strode through the corridors of the Thalkuri temple, the sacred relic tucked securely under his arm. The shadows danced on the walls, flickering in the torchlight, casting long and eerie shapes. Behind him walked Zix, whose footsteps echoed in the muted hall. The tension was palpable. We need to move quickly, Zix said, urgency coating his words. Harald Zur's loyalists won't give up that easily. They're rallying. Oh, I wouldn't have it any other way, Ben replied, a wry smile tugging at his lips. A coup without pushback? That'd be too dull. As they made their way to the central chamber, they could hear the distant murmurs of the gathered faithful. Ben's dark humor was his shield, but inside his mind raced. Keep it together, Harris. One last performance. When they emerged into the grand chamber, all eyes turned to them. The room was vast, filled with Thalkuri of every rank and file. Suspicion and hope mingled in the air. Ben held up the sacred relic, the glow illuminating his face. People of Thalkuri! His voice boomed, amplified by the chamber's acoustics. Today we turn a new page in our history. No longer will we be bound by fear and deception. Harald Zur, standing defiantly at the far end of the chamber, sneered. Empty words from a false savior. The prophet's voice held venom, but also a thin thread of desperation. You cannot sway them with tricks and lights. Ben stepped forward, his eyes locked onto Harald Zur's. You're right, Harald Zur, he said, his tone deadly calm. It's not just tricks and lights. It's truth, something you know nothing about. The crowd shifted uneasily. The battle for their belief was a silent war, fought with gazes and whispers. Zix nodded towards a platform where the ancient texts of prophecy were kept. That's your key, Ben. Show them the truth in their own words. With a determined stride, Ben approached the platform. He placed the sacred relic upon it, and the alien symbols began to glow, casting an ethereal light on the stone inscriptions. He scanned the texts, their meanings unfolding in his mind, as if the relic itself whispered the translations. People of Thalkuri, Ben began, your ancient texts speak of a leader who will uplift and unite, not divide. Harald Zur has twisted these words for his gain. He pointed towards the prophet, his voice rising. He used your faith as a weapon. Harald Zur's face twisted in fury. He lunged forward, shouting, Seize him! He defiles our sacred texts. But the guards hesitated, their loyalty fractured. They saw a true leader, standing with conviction, versus a tyrant exposed in the light of truth. Ben remained calm, a dark humor dancing in his eyes. Careful, O great prophet, your desperation is showing. The murmurs among the Thalkuri surged as Ben's words sank in. The energy in the room shifted. What was once a crowd controlled by fear was now an assembly reawakening to their own power. We have the power to rebuild, to start anew, Ben declared. We stand on the brink of greatness, and we do it together. He extended his hand toward the crowd. Join me. A ripple of agreement swept through the crowd. One by one, the Thalkuri began to chant, their voices rising in unity. Divine One! Divine One! Harald Zur, watching his power disintegrate, made a final desperate gamble. He drew a hidden blade, rushing towards Ben with a scream of rage. But Ben, guided by some inner instinct awoken by the relic, sidestepped effortlessly. He used the energy within the sacred relic to form a protective barrier, deflecting the attack. Harald Zur fell to the ground, his weapon clattering away. Game over, Harald Zur, Ben said, his voice calm and cold. Your era of deceit is finished. Zix came forward, standing beside Ben. The time of the prophet is over. We begin anew with the truth as our guide. The chamber erupted in cheers, the sound echoing through every corner of the temple. Ben looked out at the sea of faces, his dark humor giving way to something deeper, hope. He turned to Zix, a grin spreading across his face. Well, looks like I've got a new gig. Zix chuckled. Indeed, Divine One, indeed. As the Thalkuri began their journey towards a new future, Ben couldn't help but think, from zero to hero. Not too shabby, Harris. Not too shabby at all. He looked up at the relic, glowing softly. The road ahead was uncertain, but one thing was clear. He was ready for whatever came next.